At this stage in my life, I don't invest in green bananas. What the hell was Ken Holland talking about? Let's get into it with the lead. Okay. That Ken Holland press conference was something. Welcome into Oilers Nation Everyday, live from the OG Sports Closet studio. Look at this brand new Michelin-esque gear they got. They got the lid too. Get geared up for summer. You can still rep the Oilers in the summer. Do it by visiting our friends at the Sports Closet. We are live, as always, on the Oilers Nation YouTube, as we will be every single day leading up to free agency. Our boy Sergeant Battle is in with the first comment of the day, a peak offseason comment. Yamamoto to the Canes for a fourth. It's the offseason, baby. Love the comment. Love everyone chiming in on the Oilers Nation YouTube. Drop a like while you're in there. Ken Holland out here making banana jokes. Does that mean he's close to hiring our pal Liam Horrobin? Liam, how much did you give the Ken Holland that one? Did you slide it to him before the press conference? Like, hey, Kenny, the crowd's going to love this.
Yeah, me and Uncle Ken chat all the time about bananas, and he was going through it in the playoffs too. But it was a nice one, a little unexpected. I didn't see it coming in this press conference, but he did say he needs a new Ontario scout, so maybe I'm in.
Okay, there's a lot of like serious stuff to get to. One, him just saying that the Oilers didn't have an Ontario scout before Steve Staios. Is this why they took Bourgault one pick before Wyatt Johnston?
Yeah, there's a lot of layers to this. It is kind of weird. The Oilers wouldn't have a scout in the biggest province in the country, but hey, like, how many good hockey players come out of Ontario anyway?
Well, like, that'd be like if I got pulled over by the police and I was like, hey, my license is good now, but for 2 years I was driving without one. Why would you admit to it? Just don't admit to it. What a weird oversight by this organization. We'll get into the serious stuff, but the quote I was referencing off the jump, Ken Holland was asked about his future with the team, his future as GM, and he said, quote, I've got a year left on my contract, and for me, it's unfinished business. Beyond that, at this stage in my life, I don't invest in green bananas. I'm not sure if I'm going to be around long enough to see them ripen to be yellow. He then added that was a joke. None of that makes sense to me, but all right. I don't know what he's getting at here. I thought maybe he was referencing like the building of the team, like he's not gonna like get attached to prospects or picks or something like that, but it feels like he's just referencing the fact he's not gonna sign a contract extension, which we kind of knew. I don't know. I actually did, Liam, think it was odd that he came out and spoke about Steve Staios the way he did. He talked about how Staios came on board this year, did player development, Ontario scouting, and then he said, I think Steve should do more of the things that an assistant general manager does. Remember, this past season, his official title was special assistant to the GM, I believe. He basically kind of said he plans on seeing his contract through. I still think that could mean he slides up to Poho. They move the GM title to Steve Staios because, again, they don't want to lose him. But after listening to Ken Holland talk, I'm a little bit less convinced that this Staios thing's going to happen in the next week.
Yeah, when that question was asked, I was very curious the response, but he didn't really like brush it away, did he? Like he fully answered the question and what the future looks like for this organization right now, which kind of leads you to believe that maybe this is the path they're going to take, and Steve Staios will take some bigger role, I suppose, but not fully as general manager just yet. But to me, it does seem like the organization does want Steve Staios to be the general manager one day, but maybe not quite as soon as we think it would be. And you know what? Maybe another year under Ken Holland and working with Brad Holland and I guess Paul Coffey as well is something that could help Steve Staios.
Once we figure out what Paul Coffey does around here, Liam, we're going to be on to something. Ken Holland was asked by Ryan Rishaug, as you saw on your screen there, if he plans on keeping his hands on the wheel as GM, and he said yes. But then the interesting part about this, he was asked about plans for succession. He indicated he hadn't gone too far down that path yet. And I think that's probably even more telling than the quote above it of yes. And the reason I say that is because I'm now being led, what I'm reading from between the lines of that quote is he hasn't thought about succession. Okay, so what'll happen, I believe, in the next week or so is it'll be, Ken, are you going to be the GM here longer than a year? We believe that answer's probably going to be no. And they're going to say, okay, if you're not going to sign this contract extension, even if there isn't one like officially offered, then Ken, we need to start planning for who's going to be our GM 2 years from now. It's going to be Steve. If we don't name him GM now, he's going to go be the GM somewhere else. So you got to play ball here. I still think we will see Steve Staios be the GM of this team at some point in the next few months here. It's just the reporting all lines up that way. And it's not just Frank either. Darren Dreger was on TSN 1260 and said the same thing. It makes sense. I believe Steve Staios will be the next GM. I believe Ken Holland will still be here for one more year, but he may not officially have that GM designation. Or maybe it's a situation where Holland stays on as GM, Staios gets the pay bump, gets the assistant GM title, but like the deal's already signed where for the next 4 years he makes X amount of dollars and he knows that starting 12 months from now he's the GM. Like it's happening. No other way to put it.
Yeah, it's kind of an idea that ran through my head as well, and it just seems like it's something that's inevitable, and it's just kind of a timeline on when it's actually going to go down and happen. But Ken Holland really rattled off a lot of things that Steve Staios has accomplished in his career, and gave me some reassurance that he isn't just a guy who played for the Edmonton Oilers, giving him that role, right? Just because of that. He also did mention that, which was kind of funny, but he did indicate like the success he's had. He's been around the Toronto Maple Leafs for a while. He basically said exactly what he did last season with the team, aside from the Ontario stuff. He helped with the player development, and I think the Oilers saw good strides in a lot of players' development last season too, under the leadership of and direction of Steve Staios. So yeah, I think it's a matter of when, right?
Let's go to the chat here. Christopher Palmer with a good one. I'm devastated. You're devastated. We're devastated. He said the word devastated like 40 times in that press conference as well. And I think it does speak again. He also used the word unfinished business. Like he wants to see this thing through. Ken Holland's not walking away in the next month and totally leaving this organization. And he recognizes that they're close. And I think that right there is an encouraging combination if you're hoping for the Oilers to continue try to improve this team this offseason. The cap will be tough. We'll talk about that in a little bit with our Sherwood Ford Giant offseason question. It's not going to be easy, but that combination of really taking the loss hard and wanting to stick around for the last year of his deal and see this thing through, unfinished business, I think Ken Holland's going to be a very active GM this offseason, Liam.
Yeah, he made it seem like he said a couple times that I've got some difficult decisions I'm going to have to make this summer, which I don't necessarily think there's going to be anyone crazy that's going out the door. I think that kind of indicates a guy maybe like Yamamoto, and I think when they say it's difficult, it's because Yamo is such a big part of this room, and people love him, and quite frankly, I think we love him, right? Like he's just a really good he's a good player when he's on his roll, and we spoke about it yesterday. Like he's had a difficult season with his injuries, but yeah, by the sounds of it, like Ken Holland isn't going to be afraid to pull the trigger on some moves this summer and try and get this team to the next level. But I think the core is intact.
Yeah. Hitting up the chat here. We'll get to our Sherwood Ford Giant offseason question here in just a second. Dave Lunn, does Keith Gretzky leave if they hire Staios as GM? I don't think so. I don't think Keith Gretzky is a guy who's like right there, like one break away from getting a GM job anywhere. It sounds like he likes his role here. So I wouldn't expect that to happen. Palai says, I want Holland again next year. Thank you. He knows Staios' limits. And again, I think that's part of the transition is that Holland will still be here even if Staios is the GM. Holland just keeps his POHO role. Tyler Mulick is in. Our boy says, Ken Holland, massive Liam fan. How could you not be? Time On says, in your opinion, are the Erik Karlsson sweepstakes still an option? No, they're not. Listen, even if San Jose wants to retain this guy down to $7 million, how are the Oilers going to afford that? And why do the Oilers want to afford that? You have Evan Bouchard to run your power play. You need someone on that right side who's a really, really good defender. That's the big need on the right side. If you go get Erik Karlsson, okay, you need to also convince them to take Cody Ceci and Kyler Yamamoto at that point, and then you're bringing in $7 million of salary with one piece while moving out two, so you got to fill those roster spots. I don't want to like, I'll put a percentage on it. There's a 0.5% chance the Oilers are in on the Erik Karlsson sweepstakes this summer, Liam.
Yeah, and I think my sweepstakes in it are lower than that. It seems so unnecessary to go out and trade everything for an Erik Karlsson when you saw what Evan Bouchard could do. So you're just taking way minutes away from your future of the blue line for a guy who's what now, 32, 33, and you really don't know what you're going to get from Erik Karlsson next season. You might get another 100-point season, or you might get the 60-point season, whatever it was the year before, like the downgrade essentially is what I'm saying. So I wouldn't waste my time looking at Erik Karlsson. I think there's bigger areas this team needs to fill.
Yeah, I agree with you. They have bigger fish to fry. A lot of you asking about Arizona. We'll talk to that in just a second. Both Mistaken Mexican and Sergeant Battle said you need to bring back Derek Ryan next year. I think they will. Okay, more on that in a bit. Liam, the people want us to talk about Arizona Coyotes relocation. So let's dig into Arizona Coyotes relocation. Yesterday, we got the news that the city of Tempe, their mail-in ballots and all of that, they rejected the proposal. So the Coyotes organization is not getting their new rink in Tempe, the new entertainment district that they wanted. Here's the quote from Commissioner Gary Bettman, and I think this is very telling. He says, the NHL is terribly disappointed by the results of the public referendum regarding the Coyotes arena project in Tempe. We are going to review with the Coyotes what the options might be going forward. Did not reference anything about staying in Arizona. Think of every other statement we've gotten during this saga versus, or for anything that's happened with this organization. It's almost always ended with something like the NHL is committed to hockey in Arizona. The NHL is committed to the Arizona market. We didn't get that, and that's not a coincidence to me. I think this organization is done in Arizona. We had, as someone pointed out in the chat, Clayton Keller's dad saying that, players might not report. Clayton Keller's not going back. I mean, it's all very telling. This team is not going to be in Arizona 24 months from now. They might still be there next year. I think that would be a massive mistake. I honestly don't see how you can go back there next year, Liam. You look at the Oakland A's right now, they had like an announced attendance of 2,000 people at their last game. That's because, sorry, I'll keep going here for a second. And that's because they announced they're going to Vegas, but they got to play out a year or so. So the fan base gives up on you. You think people are going to go to Tempe and that ASU arena, which was fun for a year, would have been fun for 2 years. You think fans are going to go there knowing damn well the team's leaving at the end of the year? The NHL has two options. You can go to Phoenix Suns ownership and you can say, let's renovate or let's partner on a new arena for both of us. And maybe the new owner with the Phoenix Suns, I forget his name, maybe he's more open to that than the previous regime. Maybe they can make some sort of a joint thing and get a new arena downtown Arizona or downtown Phoenix. Option 2 is they got to go, man. They got to go, Liam.
Yeah, it's this does kind of feel like the last straw for them. I mean, what more could they do? They're literally, people are going out and voting no against them. And I could be wrong on this, but I was reading on Twitter last night, the vote was between a new landfill or a new hockey arena in Tempe. So if people are voting for a new landfill over a new hockey arena, I think that really is a great conclusion to this whole Coyote saga in Arizona and Phoenix. But yeah, I mean, for the fans that are obviously down there and have supported this team, they do have a few. It's disappointing for them, and you do wish like it kind of did work out. You don't really like to see teams relocate, but it's time for this to happen. Like, enough is enough, Gary Bettman. Like, you've moved on from other franchises that clearly work, and just to try and build it up down here. And I'm curious where it'll be. Like, I know Houston's obviously the big market that people kind of want to hit, and it seems like an easy one to do. But I know there's other names thrown out there too, like Salt Lake, which our boy Rusty would be very, very happy about, I believe. So we'll see. I think Houston's the best destination for them, though.
It's Salt Lake City makes sense. Kansas City would make sense because they have an arena district that does really, really well. Those two, there's tiers for me. Those two are in the middle tier of the good fallback options for the league. Salt Lake City, and I know Sacramento's been thrown in there, but no, I don't think they're going to Sacramento. Salt Lake City and Kansas City makes sense. The third tier, which is absolute pipe dream, stop talking about it, is Quebec City. This team's not moving to Quebec City. There's not going to be another Canadian team. And people are going to be like, oh, it's because Gary doesn't want him there. No, it's because it really doesn't make a lot of sense. Yeah, they'll sell tickets, but the TV market, the corporate money behind it, it's nowhere near the same, man. So it's not going to Quebec City. The top tier, it's Houston. Listen, the Furtadas, Tillman Furtada, I think is his name, the owner of the Rockets. He's been vocal about wanting a team. They've met with the NHL before. They have an arena they can slide him into. It's a natural fit with the Central Division, putting him next to the Dallas Stars. You'd have that built-in rivalry. Ryan Sharp says it, and I 100% agree. The Houston Aeros, baby, like that, they're back, or they exist in an NHL form. Like Houston makes all the sense in the world. It's a no-brainer.
I'm just gonna throw this curveball at you, Tyler. Is there one team that is no longer in the NHL anymore that you would like to see, hypothetically, Arizona return to? One city,
No,
I guess.
I think Atlanta, you've tried it, you failed it twice. It's not happening
Twice,
in Atlanta.
yeah.
Quebec City, like I said, I don't think another Canadian team makes sense. So who else even is there? Again, Kansas City and the Scouts. I know they have an arena, so that.
There was the Golden Seals too, which it wasn't. They were in San Francisco. Like, I just don't know if that area needs another team. Like they do have the Sharks already, which is only like an hour away. So I don't think you need to do it. Like, yeah, like I think it's good to experiment in a new fresh market like they did for Vegas and Seattle, and by the looks of it so far, both of them are working very, very well right off the bat. So I think right now, like, the way just not even the NHL, but all these major sports are now like moving around and expanding, and even like the MLS too. Like cities want these teams to come and they want to support them, and so I think Houston would be a nice little spot there.
Someone said Cleveland. No. Jordan Reese said Portland. No, you just went to Seattle. You're not going to Portland. It's Houston. It's Houston. They have the big TV market, decent sports town, obviously, with the Astros and the Rockets. It makes sense. Tyler Mulick says, I think with the expansion team's success, most new owners probably want an expansion team, not a legacy team. I could totally understand that. I think you build up a better fan base when you start from scratch. We saw that in Vegas. Also, if the NHL is going to go to, again, that Rockets owner and just say, hey, we're not expanding for the next 10 years. You can have this team right now. He probably takes the team right now. Right? Like, I don't think the NHL is close to going to 34 teams in the next 5 years or something like that. The league isn't ready for that. So if you go to him and say, hey, you can have this team right now, probably jumps on it. It's a team that, if they want to start utilizing LTIR, would have a relatively low payroll and a ton of room to spend on free agents and acquire players, and they have a ton of draft picks. Like, if you had an owner who was serious about building a contender, I mean, that Coyotes roster could be turned around relatively quickly.
They have a lot of good players, and they have a lot of good players coming through too. Like, they've got the goaltender in Vejmelka. Like, defensively, I guess it needs to get a little bit better, obviously. But like, when you have a guy like Clayton Keller to try and build around, like, Clayton Keller is a very, very good hockey player who doesn't get enough recognition. And then also just to talk about the prospects like Dylan Holloway, Logan Cooley, whoever they get this year with a 6th overall pick, it might be Mishkov, right? Like, the talent is there for Arizona. Holloway. What did I call him? Oh, Dylan Gunther. Sorry. Whatever. The talent's there overall for this to kind of be a quickish turnaround and become a successful team in Houston. And you know what? Maybe they get that new city bump where the players kind of rise a little bit, and then you maybe sneak into the 8th spot in the Western Conference and go on a little bit of a run.
Yeah, and listen, Fighting Amish says it. Friedman thinks talking to the Suns is a legitimate option, and I do think it is. I think that is something that could happen, or at least push this thing a year down the road. They're going to say, hey, we're giving it one more year to try work something out with the Suns. The NHL will do the whole we're committed to hockey in the desert, blah, 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 blah. And they'll try for a year. So
yeah. That facility, though, does need a bit of an upgrade as well, but at least it's standing, right? At least it exists, and they can go into that building and play tomorrow. But I was there right before the pandemic went down and just kind of saw it. Like, they were doing stuff to the outside of it. So I think renovations are in progress, but there's
Yeah.
a lot to do. But it is there, and they can go today if there's an agreement to it.
Okay, let's get into the Oilers talk for today. It's our Sherwood Ford Giant offseason question. Big shout out to our friends at Sherwood Ford, the Giant. And this question, Liam, is how many of the Oilers forwards will be back next season? So of that group of 12 that played the final playoff game against Vegas, how many of them will be back? So I'll break this down a little bit to start. There's the locks. McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman, Nuge, and Evander Kane. Those 5 are coming back. I know you could be upset, and I am, with how Nuge, Kane, and Hyman played in the postseason, but those 3 guys make $5.5 million or less. You're not replacing their production and their contributions for less than that, so they're locks. They are back. You have your RFAs, which are McLeod and Klim Kostin. I think Ryan McLeod is a lock. I think Klim Kostin's not a lock. I could see him being like, hey, you guys played me 8 minutes a game in the playoffs and down the stretch. Why would I sign here? I want to go somewhere where I'm going to get a chance to play more minutes. I also think he liked Edmonton, and he's an RFA, so he doesn't have a ton of say. If the Oilers give him a qualifying offer, he might just have to come back. So I think there is a good chance Klim Kostin is back. I think McLeod's a lock. The first 5 I named are a lock, so you're at 7. I think one of Yamamoto or Foegele will be back. The decision is interesting. Both are wildly inconsistent regular season players. Fogel's had 1 bad playoff run and 1 really good playoff run. Yamamoto's had 2 quiet playoff runs. Now, you could say he's hurt, whatever. I get that. He has been banged up. I think the injuries took a big toll on him. Yamamoto's younger. Yamamoto's the only one with a 20-goal season under his belt. But Yamamoto's a bit more expensive. Yamamoto doesn't bring the physical intangibles that other GMs might like in a guy like Foegele. I think at the end of the day, Yamamoto's upside is still bigger. Yamamoto's trade value is higher. And the Oilers really aren't in a spot for a second straight offseason where they could pay a team to take an asset from them. If someone wants to come give you a 3rd-round pick, if a GM calls Ken Holland, calls him up, Kenny, I'll give you a 3rd-round pick for one of Foegele or Yamamoto. You choose. I'm torn on which one you would pick, but I think you give up Yamamoto just because he's more expensive. And I think Fogel's a better bottom 6 guy, and that's what you're looking for. Liam, which one would you pick?
I didn't hear the question. I was tuned out, Tyler.
That's okay. If a GM called and said, I'm giving you a 3rd-round pick for one of Foegele or Yamamoto, which one do you give up in the deal?
Yamamoto. I think Foegele, honestly, for me, it comes down to a bit of size, and Foegele has that, right? Like, they're very similar players in a lot of regards, but I think Foegele just brings that. I think he has a bit more of an offensive upside. He has the penalty kill potential too, I suppose. And he had a report yesterday that he had been injured since February, which I thought was quite ironic because I feel like he got much better after the trade deadline and into the playoffs. But yeah, I think Foegele, I would keep Foegele over Yamo right now.
And listen, Dave said this in the chat. Mike Dursa's in with it as well. The injury concerns are part of it. Listen, Kyler Yamamoto's a great guy. He fits in well in that room. I loved him as a prospect. When he first came to the team, I thought he was a breath of fresh air in that top 6 because of the tenacity he played with. It's the injuries with me, and it's the injuries, and he's more expensive. I think you can rely a little bit more on a guy like Warren Foegele next year to just play 82 games and play hard for you. He'll be heading into a contract year, which I know Yamamoto would as well, but I think you could expect a bit more consistency out of Foegele because he's playing for his NHL life next year. So I think I would give up Yamamoto and keep Foegele. Okay, so now we got the 5 locks, the 2 RFAs, and the 1 contract we're keeping in Warren Foegele. You're up to 8. So now we're on to the UFAs. I don't think Matthias Janmark signing another contract in Edmonton. I think he's going to go somewhere else. I don't think Edmonton will offer him $1.25 million again. I think another team could offer him $1 million. It'll be a team in a warm climate, and he'll go there. I think Derek Ryan will be back. He told Bob Stauffer yesterday he wants to end his career as an Oiler. He wants to be in Edmonton, and I would call him up if I'm Ken Holland, and I would say, hey, Derek, you want to be here? We want to have you back. How's 850K sound? How's 900K sound? And if Derek Ryan wants to play in the NHL next year, that's probably his only option, is to take a 900K deal. So I think Derek Ryan will be back. I don't think Janmark will be back. Devin Shore, I would be like, hey, man, do you want to be a good role guy down in Bakersfield. You might get some NHL looks next year. Here's a two-way deal worth $250K in Bako, $850K in the NHL. Well, you're welcome back if you want. I think he might take that, keep him in the organization, have him around for training camp as a black ace, all that stuff, sure. Nick Bukestad's a tough one for me, Liam. It's a guy who played 90 games between the regular season and the playoffs and scored 20 goals. He's a centerman. He's a big body. He doesn't play overly physical or tough, but he can kill penalties, win draws, right shot. I'd like him back. I wonder if he gets $2 million somewhere else. And I think if he's more than like 1.75, I don't know if you can afford him. What do you think?
Yeah, that's kind of the debate I was having within myself as well. Is like Nick Bukestad would be the one guy I would like to see return out of most of the free agents, to be honest. And I think one thing that maybe benefits his contract in all of this, and the Oilers wanting him to stay, is like there isn't really a lot of guys who are better than him available in free agency. Like the class isn't great this year for what the position the Oilers would want to improve on. So I think maybe bringing a guy back that you're familiar with already, like in a Nick Bukestad, and like you said, he had 20 goals this season. Like who really knows what he'll be next season? But as long as the Oilers don't overpay, and yeah, I like that 1.7 range for him too. Like I think that's a good little market. And then the Oilers' bottom six centerman would be Ryan McLeod and Nick Bukestad. I think that's a really good duo to have.
Yeah, I think so. If you were to go Ryan McLeod, Bukestad down the middle, you'd have Ryan or Derek Ryan, that is, and Costin and Fogle potentially as three of your bottom six guys. You graduate Dylan Holloway and boom. So out of that group of 12, if we could just flash that up again, AB, I think I'm putting an X over Janmark and X over Yamamoto. So 10 of the 12, I think, could be back next year. But Bukestad, I think he might have priced himself out of here. So I'll say 9. I think 9 is the number I land on, just because I think there's like a 25% chance Costin isn't back, and there's like a 50% chance Bukestad isn't back. So factoring in one of those guys maybe leaving, it could be 10. I think it'll be 9. What's your final answer, Liam?
I wish I could mix up the show a little bit, Tyler, but
Yeah.
we're thinking on the same level right now. I'm at 9 as well. It just seems like most guys are locked in, right? There's very few conversations to actually have about people. Derek Ryan, I think the only way he isn't an Oiler is if he retires.
Christopher Palmer, no Yamo, no Janmark. Yep, I think so. Zachary Davis says, please stay clean. Daniel wants him to bring back Costin. I think everyone definitely does. And so Davin said, was Klim playing, or Klim was definitely playing hurt. Yeah, I believe he had a broken toe. So that's where I think they're at. I think Costin should be back. Sergeant Battle, bring in Connor Brown and Jesper Fast on the right wing, then find a right D. I like both those names. I think they're both solid options. Quincy said Yamo to Chicago for Taves. Taves is an unrestricted free agent, so don't need to trade anything for him. GSM, Josh Anderson would be a good fit with the Oilers. Big in speed. Yeah, big, has speed, makes way too much money, is wildly inconsistent, is injured all the time, and I don't want anything to do. They could offer me Josh Anderson for free, and I would say no. Someone said Bukestad told Bob he'd like to stay. Yeah, I mean, what do you want him to say? He's being asked on an Edmonton radio show by an Edmonton Oilers employee. And again, I love Bob's show. But like, he's being asked on an Edmonton radio show if he wants to stay in Edmonton. What do you think he's going to say? Come out and be like, no, I'm good. Hear me there?
I am here now.
Okay. Oh, are we back? Oh, we might be back. Liam. Let's just keep doing the show. Okay, yeah, we are live. Thank you. Sorry, everybody. This internet in our office went down, so there you go. Oh, I like watching myself on the 20-second delay on YouTube, and me and you being like, oh, we might be live again. Anyways, what were we talking about? You're about to ask me about some players you like.
Yes, so I kind of addressed it when we talk about Nick Bukestad, like, this class I find for the bottom end players isn't very great. The class overall isn't fantastic. So I'm going to throw some names at you, Tyler, and there's kind of names that have been just linked with the Oilers, or just guys who I think maybe could work. So just say yes or no. You can give a reason if you want. So I'm going
Okay.
to start with Cinnamon. Okay. Now this one is because he used to play for Detroit. Luke Glendening.
If he's under $1 million and you want him to be your extra forward, sure, but I'm not paying anything significant.
Yep. Okay. So this one's a little bit better. Lars Eller.
I had him listed on my article that's up right now at Oilersnation.com. I think, let's say there's a world where Bukestad gets $2 million from some team and you're like, whoa, I'm good. We wanted to spend 1.5 on our guy. Maybe Lars Eller can be your $1.5 million guy if the price is right.
Now, this is a guy who can kind of play on the right wing too. Anderson and Nola Chari.
Yeah, I don't hate him. I think, again, if you're looking for guys who can bring some intensity and some jam to this bottom six, Achari's a decent fit. I like that name.
Okay, so those are the sentiment out of the way. There really wasn't much of a group there. So on the right wing, it gets a little bit better. So we'll start with the top one. I know your answer for this, but I want to throw it out there. Connor Brown.
I have the contract written right here. We're good to go.
Okay, sweet. Jesper Fast. You did just mention his name, so...
Yeah, Sergeant Battle brought him up. Listen, that's a guy who can give you some scoring. I think he kills penalties. Don't quote me on that, but I believe he's a PK guy. So I like Jesper Fast.
Okay, so now these next two guys are guys who been linked a little bit in the past. I got a feeling I know the answer for both. Corey Perry.
I don't know why he'd sign here. I think he stays in Tampa or he retires.
You think he'll stay? He is 38 now, which is wild. This one I don't really like, but it was a name the Oilers were linked with last year, and I think if the money was a little bit better, he might have become an Oiler. Ryan Reeves. Do you think the Oilers need that toughness still? I'm not sure if they do.
No, Kleem's a better player, so why wouldn't you just bring back Kleem?
Yeah, that's fair. That's all of them, Tyler. That's all I got for you this week.
Okay. Yeah, I think there's a couple interesting ones in there. Was there one that I thought of? Oh, I thought of Gustav Nyquist, maybe as a buy low guy.
Yes.
Like a Janmark-esque addition. He maybe gets a little bit more than that, maybe not. I don't know. Tyler Mulick says Michael Bunting, you're an Edmonton Oiler. He'll be way too expensive for the Oilers, I think. Mulick asked us if we have any interest in Eric Holla. I do, and I thought about him, but I think Holla might have priced himself out of the market. I think the Devils might give him like $2.5 to $3 million, and I'd pay that. But I think the Oilers are shopping a little bit lower. Ravina says, I like Reeves. I think Christopher Palmer actually nailed it with his comment. I don't think there's a fit here. And I think Reeves is largely useless when he's not fighting, so I'm fine passing on him. Mulick asked about Zucker. Yeah, I have time for Zucker if the contract's right. If it's like a 1 year, he wants to bounce back next to McDavid or Draisaitl, I could see it, but I'm not going too aggressive for him. Some questions about the D-men. We'll save that for another day. We got a lot of off-season shows we got to get through here, folks. So we'll park it on the defensive talk, and we'll get to our player grades today, Liam, which are every day we're going to be grading a different Oiler based on how they did in the regular season and in the playoffs. And it's brought to you by our friends at Star Mechanical, Edmonton's #1 plumbing and heating company. So shout out to Star Mechanical. Liam, yeah, they got 24/7 emergency service. They're legit. #1 plumbing and heating company in Edmonton. Evan Bouchard. We're going to go in order of jersey numbers here. So we're starting with number 2, Bouch Bomb. In the regular season, he played 82 games. He scored 40 points. My regular season grade is B-. I think up until February, we were more in the C+ range, C-, C even, just in that C range. But then he was unreal down the stretch. So the final 20 games really boosted up his grade for me. Regular season as a whole, B-. Playoff grade, A-. I'm not going as high as A+ because he had some struggles defensively still, and he's a defenseman, right? So you got to grade him a little bit tougher on that side of the game. So I go A- for a playoff grade, and my chance of Evan Bouchard returning next year is 90%. Some of you might say that's really low, and I did go a little low. I think maybe something like 95% is probably what I should have done, because there's probably a less than 10% chance they trade him. But I do think there is a chance that if they don't come to agreement on a contract, they have to sit there and be like, oh boy, do we got to move this guy? That should be higher. I should have done 95. I'm sorry. I should have done 95 on the chance of returning. It is higher than 90. But Liam, what do you make of my grades? Do you agree with them? Would you have changed any of these three answers?
The only one, and you just addressed it, like I would have probably gone to 95% because the idea of trading him, I think, would be very much last resort for the Oilers. And if he does get offered an offer sheet, then the Oilers, I think, will match it really no matter what, to be honest, and then just try and figure it out from there. But yeah, I think that's fair on a regular season. I mean, the first half of the year was not great for Evan
Nope.
Bouchard. I mean, Jay had him gone in November, right? So we gotta consider that in these grades. And then playoffs, yeah, the game was it game 3. The Oilers got spanked by Vegas 5-1 or whatever it was. That one really stands out to me as like a bad defensive game from Evan Bouchard. So I think they're all fair. Maybe actually I would upgrade the playoff grade to an A just because of his impact on the power play, and he was the highest scoring defenseman in the playoffs. So, but yeah, all in all, I think it's fairly accurate for what Evan Bouchard did this season with this team.
Yeah, and I do think, like Tyler Mulick said it, whoa, only 90. Just because I think that contract's going to be hard to negotiate, but it should have been higher. I should have had that at like 95, 96%. So yeah, there you go. That's how we grade up Evan Bouchard. Let's see what you have to say. Christopher Palmer, he doesn't have arb rights. It's a great point. That's why we could see a really short-term deal. I want them to find middle ground. I want them to go like 5x5 or 4x4 or something like that. Something where we get a few years out of this and you have some cost certainty in going into seasons where the cap is going to go up. Rusty says he agrees with a B- in the regular season, but his playoff run is a straight up A for me. I'm so excited to see what Ekholm and Bouchard do after a whole year as a pairing. Matthew Jogala says you have to keep Bouchard. Yeah, you do, 100%. Like, I'm not trading the guy. There are very few defensemen I would trade for him when you consider the age and the contract and things like that. Spiced Oil, 90%. Did Jay make this graphic? Actually, yeah, sure. Let's blame Jay. Jay was on graphics today. Sorry. Ryan Sharp, if they had to trade Bouchard, I would say trade him for Barry and Schaefer. Can you imagine what Ekholm could do for Barry? That's a great line. Tyler Mulick says he goes with an A for him. Pretty much played to pretty much exactly what we needed once Barry got traded, and I think that's a fair one. Ryan Sharp was harder on him. Said Bouchard C+ over the whole season. No, I think that's too harsh. I think he was so good down the stretch when he got put in the proper role. And remember, when he was struggling here, Stealth Legends gave him a C for the regular season. The last 20 games, he was an unbelievable defenseman for this team. He was A+ in the final 20 games. So I think that's really got to boost his grade. Again, I didn't go B+ or B. It is B-, but I think he belongs in that B range.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think the lowest I would go was a C+, just because of the first half of the season. But the back half, those past, what was it, 22, 23 games, whatever, just he
Yeah.
was unbelievable. And I think that's got to be
Mhm.
credit. He was in the top 10 for most categories as a defenseman offensively. I think his defensive work for the majority of the season was decent. What plagued him in the first half was he quite frankly, couldn't score, couldn't hit a barn door or anything, could he? Like, he was struggling big time. But it all worked out for him in the end, and next season I think this guy will be the Oilers' best defenseman.
Giddy up. There you go. That's our player grade for today, brought to you by Star Mechanical. And now, Liam, yesterday, we fired up the trade machine for the first time. If you missed it, it's brought to you by our friends at AMA Travel. Head to amatravel.ca/dreams. They basically have a vacation machine there, and it's very cool. Yesterday, we did Nylander for Saros, and you all told me I was insane, that Toronto wasn't giving up enough. What I say is I don't make it up. The trade machine does. So how about that? Today, we're going with a deal, a blockbuster between Colorado and Philadelphia, Liam. The Avalanche used the LTIR money that they could have, or that they're going to get from Gabe Landeskog, and they get Kevin Hayes from Philadelphia. They also get a 3rd-round pick, and to Philly, it's Sam Girard and Colorado's 2024 first-round pick. Who says no to this deal, Liam?
I actually don't know if either team would say no. I think this benefits both teams very, very well, especially like for Colorado. You get that top 6 piece with Landeskog not being there next season, and Nichushkin, we don't really know. I think that really fills a big hole for them and increases their chances of getting back to the Stanley Cup Finals again. Obviously, losing Sam Girard doesn't make their defense any better, but I think their defense is strong overall that you can sacrifice a player like that. And Philadelphia, they got a younger defenseman and a first-round pick. Like, I actually think this is a very realistic trade. I think this one's better than yesterday, I'll be honest. I'll give you an A on my grading for this one.
So Colorado's blue line, Sam Girard, he can play both sides. He's got 4 more years at $5 million. He doesn't have a ton of value, but also Kevin Hayes is expensive. Only scored 18 goals this year. Philly wants to get rid of him. I think the first and the third, I think you could almost take those out of it, because Keith Jones was talking with Frank on his new podcast, Frankly Speaking, about how they want to build from the blue line out. If you want to build from the blue line out, Sam Girard's a good place to start. Colorado, if they bring back Eric Johnson on a short-term, low-money deal, their right side next year could be Makar Johnson, and they have Bowen Byram, and then they have Taves, Josh Manson on the left side. Like, Sam Girard's kind of a piece they don't really need. Philly wants defense. They want to save a little bit of money. They would get a first-round pick in this deal. I think maybe what I would do in hindsight is upgrade the third to a second. But again, you have to remember, Colorado's first is going to be late, and Philly's pick is going to be early in all likelihood. So no, I keep it like this. I think it's a 2024 first in Girard for Kevin Hayes and a third, and that is the deal. Sergeant Battle likes it. GSM says Colorado easily rejects. Bro, they need forwards next year. What's Valeri Nichushkin up to? Doesn't seem like anything good. What's Gabe Landeskog doing? Not playing next year. So GSM says Hayes isn't worth Girard and a first. Well, you're getting a third back, and Girard's contract hurts his value. Tyler Mulick asked why move on from him, because you have Byram and Makar, and this is going to help your top 6. Hayes fell a step behind. I think on a winning team, he's better. Tyler Mulick says Philly already has 4 defense over $5 million for next year. I think that's a fair point in all of this, but I also think they're trying to get a fresh look there. Tony DeAngelo and John Tortorella didn't get along. They'll probably look to move on from DeAngelo heading into the last year of his deal. Rasmus Ristolainen sucks, so I don't really think he's much of a factor. And there's talk that they might try to trade Ivan Provorov still this offseason. So, again, I think this is a deal that kind of fills a bit of a need for both sides on this. Anyways,
and
that's the trade machine
I think
today.
the thing, like, you addressed with the Philly blue line as well, a lot of those guys have been rumored to be gone. So I don't think those contracts really matter to Philadelphia at all. They want a fresh start. This franchise isn't where it wants to be right now, and if you're bringing in new faces, you got to think they want to have an impact on the lineup as well. So I don't think this is that crazy, Tyler.
Yeah, I don't think it's that crazy either. People saying, or Odin says CC and Yamo for Manson. Tyler Mulick says, fine, Konechny to the Oilers. Hey, I'd be all in on the Oilers getting Travis Konechny. 2 more years at 5.5. If you can make the money work, hell yeah.
Maybe that's a future mock trade for down the road, Tyler. I'll give you a week to think about that one.
We'll be firing up the trade machine for the next 35 shows, Liam, or 34 shows, whatever number we are at here. There's our trade machine for today, brought to you by AMA Travel. Quickly, before we go tonight in the sports world, Jay's trying to avoid a third straight loss. Liam, are you backing them on Betway? They're going up against Garrett Cole, the Yankees ace.
No, I will not be backing them on Betway. But wasn't somebody kicked out of the game yesterday for the Yankees for cheating? It's 2 games in a row. The Yankees have been caught cheating now. Classic Yankees.
The Yankees do be cheating, though. And, Domingo Germán was thrown out for having sticky substance, which the umpire after the game, because in baseball, the umpire does a post-game media avail, Liam. How about that?
Oh, that is weird.
But he said, quote, it was the stickiest hand I ever felt. Hell of a quote there. Not quite as good as, at this stage in my life, I don't invest in green bananas. I'm not sure if I'm going to be around long enough to see them ripen to be yellow. So, Ken Holland giving us a real treat today. People speculating. Tyler Mulick says Yamo is such a Tortorella guy. Yeah, I could kind of see that. Davin says, I want the party machine. And we'll end with that. Ken Holland called the Stanley Cup a party machine. That was great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks, Ken. Like I said off the top, I actually loved his press conference today. That man was fired up about everything. So yes, he is. He was devastated and very passionate. Thanks, Uncle Ken, for that one.
All right, big shout out to everyone who watched along today with the show. We'll be back tomorrow noon Mountain Time, Fire up the trade machine. We'll give out another player grade, which I think it's Cody Ceci tomorrow, right?
Yeah, because we don't have a number 4 since they retired it for the Cowboy.
Yeah, and no 3, so it is Ceci. Giddy up for that one. What percentage will we throw on Ceci being back next year? You'll have to watch tomorrow's show to find out. Big shout out to the Sports Closet, Everyday live from the Sports Closet studio. Short for the Giant Star Mechanical, AMA Travel, and Betway 19+. Please play responsibly. Liam, we'll chat again tomorrow, buddy.
I'll see you there.